So the clock is telling us that we are once again a few minutes behind schedule. So I apologize for that. But we're going to take a couple of minutes and let everyone file in before we start what I believe was both simultaneously the easiest and toughest panel to put together. Right? And it's the panel that showcases the work of our teachers. It was the easiest to put together because there are so many teachers in this state in our public school system doing so many great things. It was difficult because we did not want to put teachers at risk of running afoul of their principals, their superintendents, or their boards of education. So that was the nature of this panel, but one of the definite requirements, not negotiable requirements, when we started putting together this conference was we've got to hear from our teachers, because as the professional academics, they are who we should be servicing, because their students will one day soon be our students. So we're all in this partnership together. With that in mind, the other real thrill of putting together this event has been the collaboration of national organizations, statewide organizations, and local organizations. Our moderator is the executive director of one of those national organizations. Larry PASKA is the executive director for the National Council for the Social Studies, and I'm going to turn over the proceedings to him. Larry, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm just stand united with you that this is going to be a very exciting panel in a lot of ways, because I want us to have a lot of time together as an audience to ask questions of our educators on stage. As Dr. Butler mentioned, National Council for the Social Studies, just like many of our other national and state associations here, I won't name them all because I will forget one and I don't want to be rude. So I will just say, if you look on your program and you see who the event sponsors are, the event planners, please know that associations, we are not monolithic corporations sitting in high-rise towers somewhere. We are people. That's all we are. We're a group of people. And these are people that are like you. They care about the issues you care about. They care about teaching and learning. They care about kids. We exist to bring people together. I always call professional associations the original social networks, because well before Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, there were us in 1920 getting together, figuring out how to solve the world's problems and make schools better for our kids. So please think about us, all of the event planners here, as resources for you in your journey. Know that we're here to be your voice, and we're also here to give you a home to share your voice with others. So with that said, again, thank you to Flagler College, to the Gilder Lemon Center at Yale, and all of our sponsors, and especially to our educators who are here today. In a moment, I want to introduce them, but I do want to share one thing that struck me throughout today, and that is the one word we haven't really heard a lot of, and it's probably not a surprise to us. It's the word student. I haven't heard student, haven't heard child a lot. I think a lot of us have commented that what we're experiencing right now may or may not be about kids. It doesn't seem to be, because we haven't heard the word student come out very much. So in this panel, you're going to hear the word student a lot. You're going to hear children, kids. You're also going to hear learning, love. You're going to hear frustration. You're going to hear a lot of different terms that are going to center us and remind us of the purpose of education. I think it was Dr. McLean earlier who had talked about who's really benefiting from everything that's happening right now. That's a powerful phrase to me. Who is benefiting? Again, I haven't heard the word student a lot in our discourse, and I think that's because is this really about the benefit of our students? And lastly, there was a comment that was made earlier I just wanted to reference, which is the concern of how educators are going to be seen by their students in this culture and at this time. So I thought that was very profound as well, and I wanted to note that. So joining us today are 4 educators. I want to introduce our first colleague today, Kathy Gates, who is joining us as a retired teacher from Brooksville Elementary School in Brooksville, Florida. And she has the distinction. She was Teacher of the Year at Brooksville. She was a Fulbright Hays Scholar to China. And when I was reading about Kathy's journey, I was struck by what she wrote, which is her proudest work in the last 10 years before she retired was being in charge of the Global Lab Studies Unit. She was given this unit because her students of poverty rarely traveled outside the area. She brought the world to them. Any knowledge she acquired, she brought back to her students. And each year her school had a global celebration. The students and I, she says, selected a global humanitarian project. Over the years, we became known around the district for our humanitarian work. So I thank you. I just love that. And as the proud dad of twin fifth graders, I love hearing that students are getting a chance. Your students had a chance to explore and experience the world. So Kathy, my first question for you is, what was the moment in your life where you knew you wanted to be a teacher?
When I was, no,
There you
there
go.
we go. I always knew I wanted to teach. 5, 6, 7 years old, I lined up my dolls and taught them, and never varied from it. I always knew I wanted to teach.
Awesome. Thank you. I'd like to introduce to Kathy's left, Sarah Pierce. Sarah is the assistant principal at Hollywood Hills High School in Hollywood, Florida. She also serves part-time as the site facilitator for Hispanic Unity for Teens, as well as an adult ESOL and resource teacher at Hollywood Hills Community School. And Sarah, I asked the same question of you. What was that moment you first knew you wanted to be a teacher?
I'm sad to say it was after I already was a teacher. I was a single mom when I was in college, and I was looking at journalism and I was looking at business, and being a single mom going into education practically made the most sense. So I kind of shifted that way. And it was in my first year of teaching that I realized that I landed in the right place.
Awesome. Thank you. BRANDT Robinson. BRANDT is a history teacher at Dunedin High School. Got it right. In Dunedin, Florida. He teaches many subjects, including AP US history to world religions, sociology, African-American history, and world history. In addition, he's his union representative for the Pinellas Classroom Teachers Association. He's chaired the Human and Civil Rights Committee for the Pinellas Classroom Teacher Association, and he has as a trainer in restorative practice. And I also love this about your community service as a member of the Indivisible Safety Harbor, a group of citizens who meet and organize to address issues related to our democracy in the community. BRANDT, when did you know you first wanted to be a teacher?
You know, for me, there really wasn't a moment as much as there were just some critically important people in my life. And I apologize for getting emotional when I think about my mom. She's very much alive. Mom, if you're watching, I love you so much. I was raised by a single mom, and my mom, you know, she dedicated her life to social work, particularly in service to the elderly, particularly elderly citizens in need in Pinellas County, Florida. And what my mom always did for me and my brother, who's also a professor, is that she modeled a commitment to the greater good. I think that's so critically important. And I was socialized to understand that. She walked the talk every day. When I went to my community college, I took a class in 1989 called African American History, and it was taught by this amazing journalist for the St. Pete Times, Peggy Peterman. And what it made me realize is that I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I had taken AP US history in high school, and taking African-American history made me aware of just so many things that I needed to know. And it was incredibly important to have known that. And the last person I want to, and I'm looking at my wife, because like you, I was already teaching, but I didn't really understand that public schools are the foundation of our democracy. And it's my wife, Carol, who just recently retired, who helped me appreciate the role of the union in defending public education. And a lot of people say that, you know, public schools are the foundation of our democracy. I believe that. And I think it's really critically important now more than ever to walk that talk. So thank you.
Thank you. And HAYLEY McCulloch is also joining us today on our left. She's a U.S. history teacher at Gateway High School in Lee County, Florida. HAYLEY was nominated for the School District of Lee County's New Teacher of the Year Award in May 2020, and also received the 2018 Robert D. Warren Scholarship for History from Appalachian State University. And I enjoyed reading that your honors thesis in American history was about the historiography of a Confederate monument in Lexington, North Carolina. Anyway, HAYLEY, when did you first know you wanted to become a teacher?
So similar to Kathy's story, I was raised by a single mom, but that meant that a lot of responsibility for taking care of my younger siblings fell on me. And so my understanding of that was, okay, you're going to sit down and you're going to do your homework and you're going to listen to every word that I tell you and you're going to do it the exact way I tell you to do it. So that was like my first notion that I might want to teach. But then when I was a senior in high school, I had an AP World History teacher who started to crack the foundation of the conservative and Christian worldview that I had grown up accustomed to. And I grew up in a very small town, very Southern. And I have a distinct memory of a lesson that he was teaching on world religions. And most of the other kids in this class were white, all grew up either going to Protestant churches in the community or Catholic churches in the community. And so he started the class by saying something along the lines of, all right, guys, hear me out. But the God that is worshiped by Christians, the God that is worshiped in Islam and in Judaism is the same God. And so my classmates and I would just like look at each other and we're like, oh, who's going to tell him? And he follows up this statement by just passing out primary sources, excerpts from the Quran, excerpts from the Bible, excerpts from the Torah. And he says, all right, prove me wrong. And of course, we couldn't really prove him wrong or right, but it sparked a discussion. And for a lot of us, that class was the first time that we had our worldviews and our cosmologies challenged. And that was when I started to think, oh, there's a lot more to teaching than just making my siblings sit down, shut up, and do what I tell them to do. And then I went to college and I read Paulo Freire and bell hooks, and that solidified it for me.
Thank you. So I've asked each of the panelists if they might share about 7 to 10 minutes of their story, their journey, their experiences as teachers, how it's changed, the issues they're confronting, how they're challenged by them. So I really have very few questions today because we also want a lot of time for you to ask questions of our educators. So two-part question, because I always try to sneak in a second part to a question. What are recent challenges you've faced as an educator? And what are the strategies or activities you've developed to navigate those challenges? So Kathy, I think we'll start with you and your story.
I retired in 2017. And when I retired, they retired the Global Lab with me. Kids to this day are not happy about it. So I retired before too much of the hoopla. What I had seen over the years is as soon as they attached test scores to money, it started. Okay. But being in a specials class, I had free reign. They let me design my own curriculum. What a scream. I would never get away with it today. And I teased the superintendent down there. He goes, oh, I would find a way. I said, no, I couldn't do this. So my kids, I didn't have to test them. They came to me on rotation. I saw all 600 of them on rotation, and they got to come in and sit and relax and learn. And learn they did. So I did not have to test them. So I didn't have to experience all the frustrations people started to get because I was out of the mainstream classroom, honey. I was in a portable, out on the back 9, and they didn't care, as long as the kids went in and out. So I didn't experience too much.
Oh, and I don't know if you wanted to share your story at this time. I think, did you prepare something? Yeah, feel free. And then I'll rotate around each of you. Thank you. Your microphone. Here's your microphone back.
I've seen many things over the years, including the ongoing attempt to destroy public education. What I can share with you is what I saw on the lower end of education and the destructive things in curriculum that are happening and how it's affecting kids, because eventually you're going to get them in college, and they have been affected gravely. 30 years of my career was at Brooksville Elementary School in Hernando County. This was the county that made national news after their May 30th school board meeting. I believe probably the only reason we made the news nationally is it was a dead week for news. The following week, somebody got indicted. They wouldn't have covered us at all. But even the Washington Post did an op-ed on what transpired that day. The last 10 years at BES, I was the global lab teacher. It was a special unit funded by the county to teach our children of poverty about the world. I was allowed to create my own curriculum. That's hysterical. You'd never do it today. I taught 600 K-5 students about the world, continents, oceans, animals around the world, cultures of different people, world history, geography. When they entered middle school, they had a vast knowledge base. In the 10 years I was in the global lab, I didn't have one parent complaint about any book I read or any video shown. I love learning about history and took many summer seminars for teachers. In fact, some years back, I attended a Florida Humanities Council seminar here, housed at Flagler College. We were very lucky. We got to hear the late Dr. Michael Gannon speak. He was famous in the field of Florida history. We got to hear Dr. Kathleen Deegan, and she taught us all about her famous research at Fort Mose. And of course, watching the July 4th fireworks from the Bridge of Lions was an added treat. I also have a love for travel, and so my students knew that whatever I learned, I would come back and teach them. Their job was to take the knowledge home and teach someone else in their family, and they took it serious. One year, first day of school, fourth grader came to me and he goes, I'm in fourth grade now. I said, yes, sweetheart, I know. Yeah, we're gonna still learn about Egyptian history. Yes. He goes, but you don't understand. I've been waiting since kindergarten to get in fourth grade because my older brother used to teach us about it at dinner time. So these kids listen to you. Let's see. We raise money each year for a global humanitarian project, books for Aborigine children in Australia, a well for clean water at a middle school in Tanzania, bringing the world a little closer to children that never traveled. I had some kids that had never been to a beach. As soon as money was attached to test scores, the attacks on public education began. Curriculum immediately narrowed, and I mean immediately. If it wasn't on the test, you did not teach it. The emphasis was reading passages, not stories and novels, because passages were the format of the tests. You can forget cursive. In fact, last year I showed a third grade class I volunteer. I put up a copy of the Declaration of Independence. Hand went up, but Miss Gates, it's in cursive. We can't read it. Enrichment went out the window. Now young students spend way too much time on electronics in the classroom. You would be horrified. We have ruined the experience of learning how to read. My girlfriend graduated or retired from kindergarten a couple of years ago. You've not lived until you've taught kindergarten. It's like herding cats. She had to take her kindergartners at the end of the year down to the computer lab because everybody, every grade level had an EOC exam, end of course exam. I have no idea if they still do this. She took her students to the computer lab. I don't remember. I think it was probably they had laptops to use. It took forever for them to get all logged on correctly. Can you imagine? They were to read a passage and answer questions. Okay. They were supposed to know how to scroll down to the next page for the questions. Of course, they have no technical skills, keyboarding skills at all. And then, of course, if they wanted to scroll back up and to reread the passage to find your answers, they had to know how to maneuver that. Well, of course, they couldn't do it. It was insanity. Those test scores are attached to a teacher's evaluation. I retired in 2017 before COVID. Our teachers at that time were considered heroes. Remember, they transferred their in-class instruction immediately to online. But soon, within 6 months, they were being attacked for making kids wear masks. Now, you know, wearing a mask is a pain, yes, but half the kids that I had in class, let's say 3 minutes, half the kids I had in class either lived with grandparents or had constant contact with grandparents. And so since the grandparent age of the population, which was getting hit the hardest, how horrifying to have kids to go home and bring the disease home. But at 6 months later, all the hoopla went from masks to CRT and then to SEL. And it started to look like it was planned, and it was. By the 2022 election, the name Moms for Liberty appeared. One of our veteran school board members was under attack as she ran for re-election against a Moms for Liberty candidate. They tortured her. They made fun of her. They made videos, social media, making fun of her. Thankfully, she won the re-election, but it absolutely traumatized her, and you could see it. She would sit at school board meetings and say nothing. It's just been in the last few months, she has found her voice again and is speaking up. The district is continuously hammered about pornography in the schools. Teachers are called indoctrinators, groomers, perverts. I've been called everything. The Moms for Liberty wanted the superintendent gone. Come to find out, he's a Democrat. Everything came to head on May 30th. They moved the school board meeting to the high school auditorium. The fear of violence increased so much that the law enforcement had 40 deputies on the site, their SWAT team, and a metal detector at the door to enter. They wanted the superintendent removed. They were printing up yellow T-shirts. The teachers were saying Stratton stays. I was going to buy one until I read on one of their blogs that don't be fooled. Those are not teachers in those yellow T-shirts. That's Antifa. And I thought, great, I'll go wear one and get shot. Before I left my house, I made sure it was clean. I put my will on the table, along with a letter to my family. I really did not expect to make it home. I ended up getting home at 2:45 a.m. The meeting went on so long. The speeches by students and teachers were exceptional. The meeting was covered by the national media. A rural Red County in Florida stood up to Moms for Liberty and said, no. Almost done. What about that? Wrap up? I'm wrapping up. Classroom libraries are inspected, okay? You can't read anything in there without it being inspected. I just came home from Canada. I was going to buy a beautiful kids book on First Nation people, and I looked at the sales clerk. I said, I can't bring this home. I wouldn't be allowed to read it to the students because, of course, this title wouldn't be there. In 2004, I was in China on a Fulbright seminar. We were shopping in a store for souvenirs. And after we made our purchases, we waited at the exit for each other. And as we were leaving, the sales staff lined up at the exit. Okay. They all bowed their heads and they went, Lao Shi, Lao Shi. We thought it was sweet. We got outside and discovered that the word Laoshi means teacher. We burst into tears. May our Laoshi in this country gain the respect back that they once had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah, I invite you to share kind of your story, strengths, and share some of the challenges that you faced recently and strategies, how you've dealt with.
I mean, that's a tough act to follow. I don't know if this is fair. No, I'm just kidding. That was a great story. You made me cry. I'm in a little different position. I'll start off by saying I'm envious of all of you because I very much am always a teacher at heart. And I miss those relationships with kids because once you move in with adults, it's a little more transactional. However, I think it's equally as important. Right now, my role as assistant principal, what I think the major part that I play is creating the spaces for teachers to feel safe to teach and to give them the spaces that they need to have creative freedom and to, be able to design their curriculum and feel confident in their skill sets and what they can do. I'm very fortunate because we're in Broward County, so I was mortified listening to your story. I do vaguely remember hearing about it, but to know somebody who was there. We have a very diverse district. It's very blue, so it's a little bit different. Our leadership at the school level and at the district level, I really do feel that they are doing the best that they can to support us as we kind of all navigate this ambiguity in the statutes that are being passed. So I'm grateful for that. We still do have some of our challenges. I have seen we have had some Moms for Liberty at school board meetings, not at the presence or the level at which you're discussing. So, we do have some of that we are encountering. But I think the difficulty is dealing in this environment that's become super political and overwhelming. Like there's so much that we're being asked to manage and take care of. And in my role, I really feel like as much as the children are what we're in charge of every day, my role is really to feed the teachers. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, Feed Teachers or They Eat the Children. Like, if we take care of the teachers, then the teachers are free to then turn around and do their job, which is to take care of the children. And so a lot of it is just really trying to build community partnerships. I was super excited to see the Seminole Tribe here. We work a lot with them. They're literally a mile and a half. You can see the big Guitar Hotel in Hollywood from our school, so it's really cool. But so that's a great relationship we have. Working with the Art Prevails Project, that's another community initiative, an art collective. And they come in and work with us every year, having the relationship with Hispanic Unity, bringing in jobs for future graduates, working with JA Finance, and really just reaching out and trying to bring in as much support and expose our kids to as much and continue to pilot on regardless of what's happening. Because I think that what is being lost in the discussion about students is as we're focusing on resources and books, which I'll put my little plug here. Don't worry, parents, they're not reading books. They're on their cell phone, right? So as much as we're chasing after books, what I need parents to focus on, watch what they're looking at on their social media, take out their earbuds and listen to what they're listening to 24 hours a day, and get some software, parental software, and take away the pacifier, because that is probably the number one challenge that I see teachers facing. And it goes up to us because when the teachers are done, they've tried to teach a lesson all day and the kids aren't paying attention and they're tired and they're afraid of what they can teach. And are these books okay? What's lost is there's a lot of self-censorship. Teachers are just not putting out their classroom libraries because A, they don't have time to scan all of those books. B, they're afraid somebody will come in and challenge and say you shouldn't be teaching that. So a lot of that. And also, resources are one thing. What are the opportunities that we're putting for our children? What are we doing to make sure that our vulnerable kids, our marginalized kids have access? So like a big thing that I try to stay focused on is broadening the curriculum. With the Seminole Tribe, this was going back, well, it kind of started with COVID. I was really sad because I approached a teacher. I was like, hey, we should really bring a Native American Studies class to the school. He's like, yeah, I'd love to. I went to the state curriculum and there is no Native American curriculum. So we work with the Seminole Tribe to design and put together a curriculum So, I mean, we have to code it as Florida history and multicultural studies because I don't yet have a course code. But I was so happy to speak with the Seminole tribe with them here because hopefully I'd love to see that come to fruition and have that added as a required course. This year, we did bring in women's studies. We still have African-American studies. We have hip hop and literature. We have Holocaust studies. So despite the state coming and saying, you know, we don't want you teaching that, I am proud of Broward County that is still something that they have codified as what they want us teaching in schools. It's not mandated, but it is highly suggested. And, you know, we are trying to broaden and continue that depth. Another thing, I'm the lucky master scheduler. And if anyone knows what that is, that's no summer. Right. But one thing that I really try to do is to push those kids into advanced coursework who otherwise aren't getting those opportunities. We have CTASE for All, which is career and technical education. We try to make sure all of our students have a CTASE class, and we're not just putting our low-level kids into a gym class because it's easier than fighting with them to learn web design. You know, we're trying to increase our dual enrollment options with schools that are nearby. We have Sheridan Vocational, for example. So we're really trying to create in those spaces and opportunities for children and for teachers to be successful. You know, Zen Education Project is really how I got connected with Dr. Butler, and I thank him. Deborah Menkar, I go to a lot of the trainings because I try to then take those resources and then share them with the teachers and get that information and continue to give them quality curriculum with which they can work with that is kind of outside of the fold and is outside of the norm, because it's so important for us to continue to be courageous. I heard someone say that earlier, and I totally agree. I'm a fast learner and a hard worker. So like one of the panel members said earlier, the worst they can do to me is fire me. So I will continue to try to create those spaces and do what I need to do, because at the worst case scenario, I'll be calling you, Dr. Butler, and saying, what's up in Flagler? So, I mean, I really think the biggest part that I play now, as much as it is for the children, it's really to try to build those partnerships, put in that extra work, because a lot of it is self-sacrifice. I go to work in the morning, and from 7 to 3, the kids decide for me what my day is going to be like, or the parents, or whatever initiative or whatever comes up. But it's that after time when it's your time and you're like, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to take this training so I can get these resources, or I'm, going to work on Zen Education Project. If you haven't seen it yet, please watch the Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks. It is fabulous. The most heartbreaking part of that for me was realizing how broke and poor that poor woman was her whole life fighting for everybody. But I mean, it is definitely something I highly suggest taking the time, and the book is great as well. But the Zen Education Project has always given such a wealth of resources. And so I encourage everybody, even as educators, build those connections. And just briefly, as I got my hook to come off, I do just want to say hi to my professors. I'm in the PhD program at FAU. So it was interesting hearing about the situation with the college professor. And I will tell you, it is affecting there too, because they actually canceled courses because of the new mandate. So it is happening. But hi to my professors, and thank you for your support, and thank everybody here today.
Thank you so much. Right. I'd love to learn your story. Please share.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just want to thank all of you who are here, and I hope you don't mind giving yourselves a round of applause for being here with us. Thank you all. Now, part of the reason I asked you to do that is because everybody nod with me, even if you don't know the history, because for a lot of us, there has been an onslaught against public education here for over 2 decades, and many of us have been fighting that fight. So what's happened more recently is really just a continuation of that. But the way I see my story is really just rooted in the unfortunate death of an African-American named George Floyd, whose death many Americans and people around the world saw for 9 minutes on video. And what would have otherwise been the unfortunate death of another Black man became something deeper, because I think the pandemic really ripped the scab off. And for millions of Americans, they were seeing institutions badly corroded. So for a lot of Americans, particularly a lot of white Americans, they began to question his death as something deeper, as something that might be rooted in our history and maybe even rooted in systemic racism. And I think what we're now experiencing is a real backlash against that. So my more recent story began at the beginning, believe it or not, of the 21-22 school year, when I had a young man enrolled in my African-American history class. I did not even get a chance to know him because he was only in class for 3 days. But then 2 weeks later, a parent filed a textbook appeal against the textbook I was using on the grounds that it was positing critical race theory in the 1619 Project. And it was only then that I realized that that young man was that woman's son. In other words, she enrolled her son in my class so he could get a copy of the course outline and syllabus. So a committee was formed. Her appeal was unanimously rejected, but then she filed a formal records request. I had to submit all the materials I used for the class for the whole semester. Nothing came of that. But in January of 2022, our reporter for the Tampa Bay Times, Jeff Solowchek, did a story. And I'm not laughing when I tell you this, but if you Google Brant Robinson Marxist, you'll see the article. It's not a joke. It's because that's the accusation against me. Now, when that happened in January 2022, our governor was beginning his reelection campaign. People around the country were watching what was happening in Florida. There were already legislatures around the state starting to replicate some of the changes made by the DOE. And of course, that really paralleled everything that's been going on the next 2 years. In July, of course, the two laws took effect. And of course, Florida became the epicenter of this onslaught of the teaching against our history in its entirety. And really to help address the second part of the question is what we've done about it is we realize we have to be the kindest, most decent, but the most fierce and most credible people in the room. So we attend every school board meeting every single month. My wife, who just retired, we're always there together because there's Moms for Liberty members. And here's what I know. National Public Radio, a year and a half ago, they did a survey of parents and guardians. And 75 to 80% of parents and guardians said they support their public schools, they support their public school teachers, and they support what's being taught. And what that made me aware of is I never disrespect people in our public. I never disrespect citizens because I know a lot of them are working really hard. They don't necessarily know what's happening in the world. They mean well. They care about public schools, but we have to reach them. We have to engage them. So being at school board meetings is critically important to do that so people can see that people are standing up against them. So what otherwise might have been a nice mantra, a year and a half ago, parental rights probably sounded like something that seemed reasonable. Our public schools have always been open to parents and guardians. But a year and a half later, more of the public is saying that, these people are angry and they're nasty and they're vile. And they're accusing teachers of indoctrinating and grooming and sexualizing students. So I think more and more of our public is realizing that Moms for Liberty is not only off base, but may even be motivated by bigotry and white supremacy. And so what we're trying to do is organize strategies where we can galvanize and engage and educate and inform and mobilize members of our public to make sure that they're aware that they understand what we all know, which is that our public schools are the foundation of our democracy. And I couldn't be more proud to be here with you all. It's such a privilege to be with you all. And it's such a privilege to know that we're surrounded by allies. And we have to believe that we have the majority of our public on our side, not because they're Democrats or Republicans, but because they're fellow American citizens who have to understand what we do each and every day. We're no more important than anybody else, no less important, but what we do is critically important. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And Haley, please tell us your story and kind of the challenges right now and the strategies. How are you working through them?
So I want to start by saying that I have a sense of imposter syndrome right now. The three of you are incredible and you are laying the groundwork for teachers like me and making it better for teachers like me. So thank you. I'm honored and privileged and very humbled to be sharing the stage with you. As far as the challenges, I have a list prepared. But I'll start by saying that Lee County, where I teach, was one of the last counties to integrate in the whole country. And in addition, it's Lee County, so you can imagine where that name comes from. But currently, we are lacking 197 teachers in our county. We started out at 200 at the start of the school year. Somehow they found 4, but we still got a lot of room to grow. And when I was thinking about how to answer this question of challenges and strategies, I thought of the challenges as being two-pronged. So there are these day-to-day kind of systemic challenges that we face, and then there's curricular challenges. And so when thinking of the day-to-day challenges, 2 years ago, our school districts, in an effort to save money, which they saved almost $2 million by doing this, they switched our schedule from a block schedule to a period schedule. And for those of you who don't know the teacher lingo, what that means is a block schedule is when students take 8 classes over the span of 2 days. So they have an odd day and an even day, or an A and a B day. A period schedule is 7 classes in 1 day. So classes went from being about an hour and a half long to being 43 minutes, roughly. But the result of this is that we, specifically high school teachers, lost about 2 hours of planning a week. And my teacher fellows in here, you know how important our planning is to us. We use every second of our planning to do what we have to do, to lesson plan, to find resources, to grade, to contribute to 504 plans and IEPs. And then in addition to all of this, our responsibilities in Lee County have skyrocketed because of the teacher shortage. We also are lacking in paraprofessionals. We don't have enough people to work with our ESE students and our ELL students. We are now, as teachers, responsible for contacting parents for discipline, grades, truancy, and tardies, most of which used to be the job of our school social workers and guidance departments. And probably the most challenging thing that we're facing right now is that because of the teacher shortage, we're losing our planning about 2 on average, sometimes 3 times a week to cover for classes that just don't have teachers. There are 2 classes at my high school right now that don't have a teacher. There's an Algebra 2 class and a World History class, and the kids just show up to that class and sit there and play on their computers, and we babysit them. So that's happening. And in addition, our class sizes have gone up. Some classes are experiencing like 35. All of my classes are at about 34 to 35 students right now. But there are some classes in the district that have peaked at 40 students. And there's no way logistically to plan and deliver lessons that are high quality, that are differentiated for 40 kids, let alone 35 in my classes right now. So that's kind of the day-to-day. And I think that is linked to the bigger things that we've been talking about all morning, the assault on public education. It starts by cutting off teachers' ability to do their job at the knees. We're being attacked as professionals and intellectuals. But as far as curriculum goes, so just as a side note here, I'm also a full-time graduate student at Florida Gulf Coast University, and I'm getting my master's in history. But what I'm hoping to write my thesis on is something related to civics education in Florida. And I'm trying to put that into historical context and kind of suss out who the key players are in developing new civics curriculum and patterns with old civic standards and civics education. But I think it was 2 years ago, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the legislature adopted new standards for 7th grade, which is where civics is taught, and for 12th grade, which is where government and economics is taught. And so I'm going to run out of time soon. The issue with these new standards is that they do not prize intellectual curiosity. They prize indoctrinating children and forcing them to see America as fundamentally Christian and trying to force patriotism onto these students. And by the way, these standards were developed in conjunction with Hillsdale College. So there's that. But just to give you an example, one of the old civic standards, students were supposed to simulate the trial process, where you'd have students acting out as juries and judges. That very active standard that taught students how to participate in democracy has been replaced with a standard that says students have to describe the trial process. And then my personal favorite, an old civic standard was to compare different forms of government. The new civic standard is to analyze the advantages of the United States over other forms of government. And then another one An old one was evaluate candidates for political office by analyzing their qualifications, experience, issue-based platforms, debates, political ads, all great primary source-based classwork. That was replaced with identify the constitutional qualifications required to seek election to political office. That's it. And then there are more new standards that are all about the Judeo-Christian roots of American government and why communism is bad and capitalism is good. And so there's that on the curriculum side of this issue. But what I will say is that, so that's civics and that's government. I teach U.S. history, and luckily the U.S. history standards have not been completely revamped yet. So there's still some room there for us to push back, and we still have a little bit of freedom in how we teach the content. Whereas in the civics and the government curriculum, there's no freedom there. You're being told exactly how to teach this content. But anyway, with the U.S. history standards, I think that a strategy that I have as a teacher is, I can't come out guns blazing, telling my kids my political views or telling them what to think. But what I can do is I can give them primary sources. And when we get to the part, for example, in our curriculum about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., where we're supposed to have students compare the two beliefs and ideologies, okay, I'll teach MLK and I'll teach Malcolm X, but I'm going to do it my way. When my classroom door is shut, I'm going to give them the primary sources and let them determine for themselves what history tells us. So I think that there's a lot to say and a lot of weight to be placed on good primary source analysis in the classroom. That is how you fight for academic integrity in history.
Thank you. I had a follow-up lightning round question, and I don't know how we could answer this, which is what more still needs to be done. I do feel like that could be the subject. That's a whole summit. So I do want to ask maybe one question of each of you just kind of quickly, which is just what's one thing that can help? What's one thing that could just help you help your kids better tomorrow? But
I don't have kids tomorrow.
okay.
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I could just give you one thing, but I would say that establishing trust again in the teachers would go a very long way, because that relationship between the teachers and the students is critical to learning. So I would think just having more support for the teachers in the classroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke about attending school board meetings, but I think we need to go a little bit farther than that, because, this mantra, parental rights, with tremendous respect to parents and guardians, one of the most common complaints, and we'll all nod when I say this, among teachers in my career is that we often never have enough involvement from parents and guardians. And we say that with respect for single parents and parents who are grandparents being parents again. But when we attend school board meetings, we need to invite members of the public to attend those meetings. But when we do, we need to be very deliberate and mindful about respecting parents and guardians and modeling that commitment by inviting them to get more involved in public schools. We've always needed more parental and guardian involvement in public schools. And so we need to really all get behind that effort, because if we don't, we'll run the risk of this whole movement being hijacked from people who believe they are the authorities. And they're groups like Moms for Liberty, and they're using this mantra to destroy what we do for a living. So we need to get ahead of it. We need to be, as I said, kind and decent, but fierce and credible while we do it. So thank you.
We need money. Over the past 2 years, or 3 since COVID, really, when we received additional federal and state funding, some of that went to increasing teacher pay through bonuses. And that was touted by our school district as, oh, here's your raise, here's your increase in pay. But the issue is that even with those bonuses, our baseline salary plus the bonuses does not keep up with inflation. In fact, we are making less now than we were before COVID started. So that's a big thing. And just to add on to that, last year, our school district had been using ESSER funds, which were emergency funds to help ameliorate the effects of COVID-19. on our students, they had been using some of that money to pay teachers extra for having to cover classes during our planning. 3 days before the school year started, we got a very cryptic email from our school district and our talc rep saying that there's no more ESSER funds, so you're just not going to get paid extra for covering classes. So we have a lot of teachers who, because they don't have time to get everything done during their planning, because we have less planning, they're working outside of contract hours. They are giving our schools in our school district free labor. And our administrators know that, and they're taking advantage of the fact that we are giving them our free labor to make engaging lessons, to grade, to come up with good assessments. And so I think that what needs to be done, and I can't, promote the STRIKE word, but we've got to do something collectively as educators. And just as an example, the teachers in my county are considering a contract strike. And so what that would mean is we are going to work the parameters of our contract, and that is it. We will show up at 6:35 when the students show up. We will leave at 2:05 when our contract time is over, and we will not do any work outside of school. And if students suffer because of that, it is not our problem. It is yours. It is the school district's problem, and it is the Department of Education's problem. So we need more activism like that on the ground, more teachers agreeing to do stuff like that.
Thank you. Kathleen.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. We were talking earlier about the power of the pen and the power of this and that. I think we need to concentrate on the power of the vote. And we need to stress and teach these students. I mean, the third graders I worked with last year, we're going over the Declaration of Independence and stuff. You ask any of those third graders, what's the first thing they're going to do when they turn 18? I'm going to get ready to vote. And the only way we can change anything in this state is changing the legislature, changing who we elect. I think right now the power of the vote is one of the most important things. If people do not get out and vote and replace these people, let's face it, our curriculums are controlled by the state. Everything's controlled by the state. We learned hard lessons this year with the supermajority, some of, the things that went through. I think we need to really work on the power of the vote.
Thank you. So I'd like to turn this over at this point to you for questions of our esteemed educators here. And I'm going to try to facilitate this a little bit differently this time. So we're going to start, and if you miss it, we'll probably come back a second time. But I'm going to start with this row right over here, this kind of third of the auditorium. If any questions here, please raise your hand. We'll come over. We will promise the other third sections will get some time in a moment. Any questions of this third section right now? This is the teacher wait time, the 7 to 9 seconds we always do. It's awkward.
Okay,
it's even worse on stage, right?
Question. Hi, everyone. I'm Deja. And as of 3 months ago, I was a teacher. And so this speaks really close to my heart. So I wanted to just ask you, I wanted to return back to a question that was asked earlier by an educator that I think oftentimes gets lost in this debate or this discussion is the student experience, right? The students that you interact with on a daily basis who do lose hope, who are seeing this, and oftentimes are not empty vessels who are just waiting to be taught. Right. A lot of students don't come into the classroom not knowing about Christopher Columbus. Some people know. Right. And so how do you kind of speak or energize your students that are coming in? Is there examples of student activism that you're seeing, of students kind of galvanizing?
For, I don't know, maybe 15 years, on the very first day, I tell my students that I make a commitment to them. I don't ask my students to make commitments to me. I make a commitment on the first day that I will never, ever embarrass or disrespect you in my classroom. And that's critically important, the kind of environment I'm trying to create. The irony of all of what we've been experiencing the last couple of years is that my classroom is my sanctuary. It's where I feel most like myself. My students know that. I'm the first teacher on campus. I get there every morning at 5:30. I love my job. I love what I do. I meditate every day for 15 minutes. But but my students know I give everything I have for them because I'm trying to meet their human needs first and foremost. And it's sad in a way that it took a pandemic to remind me that my fundamental job is to meet the needs of my students. And I always want them to know that what I do for them first and foremost is about meeting their needs as human beings first, and the curriculum will follow.
I'd follow that up with, for me, it's a little different. I remember those days of being club sponsors and stuff. But I think it is, again, creating those spaces. So going to that teacher, hey, you think you can take on this club? And then going back the next week, hey, remember last week when I stopped by, do you think you want to take on this? You know, the kids want a dance team, which I'm going to say hello to my friends who came to support me, Miss Watson and Miss Shacklewood. Yay. 2 years ago, Miss Shacklewood actually did take on the dance team, and she still doesn't let me forget that time of her life. But she did it because the kids had a desire and a need, and it's something they want. So, you know, like I used to be the spoken word sponsor. So continually finding somebody else who can step in and take on that role. And kids don't go to school. I'm sorry, for English, social studies, and math. They come to school for football. They come to school for band. You know, that's a big thing, really working with the elective teachers to make sure that those kids are placed in the appropriate band class, or, you know, whatever, the student government class or whatever, so that then they're incentivized to want to come to school, going to their events, like going to homecoming, going to prom. May is the worst month of my life because I don't think I get home before midnight because there's top 5%, you know, senior awards, underclassmen awards. So just kind of being present and showing the students that you care about them, because until they know you care about them, they're teenagers, man. And that's a tough crowd. So if they don't think you care about them, they are not going to care about you. And I just quickly do want to say, I'm sorry. I am that person putting 35 and 40 kids in a class. What she's saying is true. It is not because I want to. It's because, unfortunately, we're budgeting and stuff. But I do want to just support that. That is, unfortunately, the reality that we're in right now.
So much for class size amendment,
It's a class size average across the school.
not the way it was originally written. We have a way in this state to pass amendments and then like ignore them.
Or modified.
More questions from this side.
I love this panel. I won't call you heroes because you're tired of being called heroes. You'd rather have a pay raise than be called heroes. BRANDT, Energy, Fridays, discuss.
Yes. Okay. So at the end of the last school year, I had actually submitted my resignation. I was done. I was exhausted. I was like, I was just done. And I knew that I was going into graduate school and I really wanted to focus on that full time. And I was just going to get some side job. But unfortunately, I have a blood disorder that I was just diagnosed with earlier this year. So I have to have decent health insurance. And I think that a lot of teachers are in my position where we are in this job because we need the benefits and we don't have the education for anything else. A lot of us came from colleges of education where this is exactly what we were trained to do. A lot of teachers have families, so they can't just quit and switch gears and go back to school easily. And they got people depending on them. So burnout is so real, and there's nothing, I don't know, this sounds really negative, but I think there's nothing that can be done about it until these systemic things start changing. I think that personally, though, something that is helping me is the fact that I am in graduate school. And so I have an academic and an intellectual space where I can start to think through all of frankly, the bullshit that I've seen for the past 4 years. But, you know, not everyone has that. So.
Well, the scary fact of the day is I'm the longest serving teacher at Dunedin High School. I'm in year 27, and this is the same high school where Governor Ron DeSantis graduated from a year before I started my career. But I say that because for 10 of my years teaching, while I taught full-time teaching during the day, I also trained new teachers for 10 years, teachers in a program called Transition to Teaching. And one of the most devastating statistics I always share with them, long before there was a pandemic, was that on average, almost 50% of all public school teachers don't make it past the 5th year of their career. And if we all just sit with that for a second, that's devastating. So where I am as a person, as a human being, as an American is, I spoke about what the pandemic did and ripping the scab off. For me, I believe right now we're in the middle of what I call a great remaking. I really believe, and I'm saying this in front of Dr. Blight. Dr. Blight, my concentration in my master's degree in African-American history was Reconstruction. I really do believe we're in a great remaking. And so if you understand that statistic, about half of all teachers leaving the profession, that's devastating. We've got to get serious about public education. We've got to get serious about it because we haven't been. And so if we don't see it clearly now, we're really at risk of what it's going to tremendously do and impact our democracy.
And just to build off of that, the scary thing is so many of our best teachers are close to retirement. And when you're not retaining, you're trying to develop new teachers. A lot of those preparation programs are no longer funded. So you're really trying. But the burnout is real. I mean, I'll be very frank. I think about leaving my job once a week, at least, probably once a day. And that's, I don't, because I recognize that what my job is important. It may not be my dream job, but it's an important role because I care about the students and the teachers. And so that is a fundamental thing for the people that I serve, whether it's the teachers or the students. So I don't want to abandon them, but it is exhausting. And I don't get to go on Fridays anymore because now I am the subject. I used to be part of the crew that would talk about it, but now I'm that person that comes in and says, oh, you have to do this. Oh, I need you to do this. Oh, you got to keep Johnny in your class. So on Friday, when people are at their burnout point and they're going to the watering hole or wherever they're going after school, I tell them, have a good time. And I kind of go a different direction because that's one thing I have learned. And I learned in the leadership program when I was in school years ago. The more you move up, the lonelier, your circle becomes. And I've come to acceptance of that because just like teaching, I landed here by accident too. I was not interested in administration. And then a grant came through for Propel through Florida Atlantic University. And someone came to me and said, hey, there's an opportunity for a free degree. It could have been digging ditches and I would have been there on Saturday morning because it was a free degree and it actually wound up being a leadership degree, which led me into being in this position. So I kind of accept the fact that sometimes in life, what comes at you is what's meant for you. And so there are days it's really hard for me with the burnout to stick with it when all the foolishness is coming and you're dealing with chaos that shouldn't be there because it has nothing to do with teaching and learning, which is what the industry is that we should be focused on. I still recognize that there are teachers that have called me, hey, I got a job offer at this school in the West. Yeah, you'll do great there, but the kids in this Eastern school need you here. And, they make that decision to stay and teach our kids or, bringing both Miss Watson and Miss Shacklewood from the middle school I was at to the high school, bringing in those quality teachers and really being vested in building and supporting the system. So the burnout is real, but there is a back and forth and, you find and you attach to those things that are meaningful and that make it purposeful. And you do the best that you can to shed and let go of the stuff that hangs on the back of you that really has nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish.
At our May, at our May 30th infamous meeting, teachers read their resignation letters at the podium in front of the school board. People were crying. I mean, they were so eloquent and stuff. And this was after a year of being accused constantly of being groomers. You're turning my kid gay. I mean, it was incessant. That's why we made the Morning Joe show. The teacher letters were read. Kids got up. Eloquent kids. I mean, I was so used to working with the little ones. I had nothing to do with the high schools, but eloquent kids that had it. These kids have had it with having everything manipulated and listening to this garbage that my teacher's nothing but a groomer. And it's just incessant. It's not as bad as it was. I don't think they like making the national news. And that pretty much nipped it in the bud. And that's why you have to stay on it and stay on it and stay on it. One thing Hernando County is doing a little bit innovative to get teachers, because I think they were 100 short too, is they're taking people with 2-year degrees that are interested in becoming teachers and providing free courses for those last 2 years if they will sub in the system or whatever. Anything to get people back in, because I can't imagine what the numbers are like in the colleges of education, because they have got to be plummeting.
I think we have a question in back.
Hello, I'm Shauna Liverati. I'm the education coordinator with the National Council for History Education, and I live here in Central Florida in Lake County. So my question is specifically for SARA. You're in the hotspot, and we're coming to Broward County to work with your teachers. We're super excited. But what I hear from teachers all the time is that administrators are aware of all of these problems, and they're like, just that's the way it is. And I really applaud you for coming here. You don't have a union to back you for being here today. Like, that's a tremendous act of bravery for you to be here. So please give her a hand. But my question is, because it seems like what I'm hearing from teachers is when they do approach their administrators, they're like, we know there's nothing we can do about it. So what are the administrator organizations doing? This question came up this morning with the historians. What are historians doing to support teachers? What are those administrator associations doing to support teachers and make active change?
Well, we have what's called the Broward principals, assistant and principal. It's not a union, but it's an organization. And they do a lot in the background. Miss Aragi and Miss Mac and Dr. Mac, I don't know if it's Miss or Dr. Maxwell, they're constantly advocating, going to, Tallahassee, working with the lobbyists. And I mean, I have to be honest, when it comes to administration, there are some times that teachers will come to us with issues and there is nothing, that we can do about it. At the same time, I think just like anything else, that's on a person by person basis. And I think that, like I said, where, I make a huge personal sacrifice to do a lot of my job outside of my job hours. The job inside is dealing with chaos. So just like the teachers are dealing with chaos and they're being told, oh, there's nothing we can do about it, we're in the same place. And I just have to be mindful that what I'm willing to do and the sacrifices I'm willing to make, it shouldn't have to be like that. Like I remember when you had, Mr. Clark, the story of Mr. Clark, or freedom writers, like all of these teacher stories, like they have to like lose their relationships and have no life and get a second and third job to buy stuff for their kids. And like the expectation of what educators will have to do to actually do this job is a lot. So I think that that's really just a roll down the hill, so to speak. The snowball rolls down the hill. So I think, in fairness to a lot of administrators, and it's not fair to the teachers, but the administrators are exhausted too. We're in Broward County, we're looking at doing behavioral threat assessments, suicide risk assessments, we're having safety drills. We have to have this meeting. We're taking care of this. We have to look out about this. A lot of stuff is coming in that, again, is not about reading, writing, counting. It's about everything else. So I think the exhaustion is just filtering down. However, I would implore administrators, when a teacher comes to you with a problem, first off, just listen. Like, don't automatically just go off with there's nothing you can do about it, because they don't want to hear that. And try to do something, like sometimes it can be, go in and cover their class for 15 minutes so they can step out and have a breather, or hook them up with somebody that could be a mentor, or work with them on lesson planning, or provide them resources, that they can use for a class they're struggling with, or sometimes make a swap, oh, you have little Johnny and they have a little Johnny. So maybe we can swap your little Johnnies and it'll work out, and just do the best that you can to try to support them. But I can understand why teachers are saying that, because there are times that there's nothing that we can do about whatever it is. For example, class size is a big one. I'll get emails. Hey, I got 36 kids in my class. This is really hard. I'm sorry. I don't have any place to move any of those children. So there is kind of that give and take. But I am sorry to hear that so many teachers are feeling that way. And I know there's a lot of great administrators on the front lines that are really putting their best foot forward, but we're kind of in our own situation, just like teachers are being asked a lot, the same thing is happening to us. So I really just think it's just rolling downhill.
And wait till you see the behaviors coming down the road. These kids have grown up with active shooter drills. It's a whole different atmosphere. It's a whole different environment and educational experience for them. And you're going to see it as these kids get into college.
We have time for one more question. If we can go into the center here, we have a few possible questions here.
And while you're walking, please reach out when you get to Broward County. So you'll have a friend there already.
Hi, my question is really about what is being done to fight back, to not only retain teachers, but to protect teachers in the future. I have more concerns and personal concerns because I'm not only married to a teacher, I recently retired. There's a lot of teachers in my family, and I've heard a lot about teacher burnout. And with all due respect, the administrators purposely overloading teachers, stealing their planning periods, et cetera, et cetera. 50% of the teachers entering the profession don't make it past 5 years. What I'm really concerned about is more of a direct threats to teachers by groups like Moms for Liberty. I'm talking about violent threats. Not so far ago, in a school board meeting in Pinellas County, the two Moms for Liberty school board members were on their phones interacting with the Moms for Liberty website while the meeting was going on, and the website was making violent threats towards me and my husband in the audience as the meeting was going on. And this is not an unusual occurrence, and they're partnering with the other Florida group, Proud Boys, at not only the Hernando County meeting that I attended, but throughout the state of Florida. So my question is there something, some messaging, something that we can do, organize to fight back against these forces? Thanks.
Yeah, I made this comment earlier. It's something that I've been advocating for the last 2 years, but it's everything I believe about the public and everything I believe about how critically important our fellow citizens are, is we really need to put together an ad campaign that is just featuring teachers, 15 to 30-second spots where they can actually hear from teachers. It's critical that, again, these 4 words about being kind and decent, fierce and credible, if we can speak to the public about what we do, but also standing up to these charges and making it clear to them so that they can put a face with their belief that they value public schools, but they can actually hear from teachers and understand what we're going through. I think that's our best way to galvanize the public to make sure that they're really truly an ally when it's time, not just to vote, but also when they can stand up to other people in their own communities who might be behind these kind of threats and this kind of intimidation.
I guess I'd love to see, I mean, I don't know how to make it happen, but maybe if we could get a Moms for Education group to get started. And I think one way it could be done is there's a lot of parent teacher associations across districts, and they already have a national, platform and foundation. So maybe that's an area that, we could create a group that could counteract and have a different narrative, because like I said, so far we haven't had too much in Broward County, but it seems like this is really a problem elsewhere. So maybe to have that counter narrative from other moms that are supporting public education.
Yeah, and just to briefly add on to that, I mean, it's such a critically important idea. But the idea of rearranging the furniture of the Titanic, one of the existing problems for the entirety of my career is that if you look at the membership of our PTSA, I mean, do public schools really actively reach out to try and get a truly representative cross-section of all the parents and guardians and communities? I don't believe that's true. We often give it lip service, but it's something that's a perfect example. If we're really going to be remaking the country, we can't keep doing what we've been doing all along. We need to actively reach out. So if we have a group like, parents or guardians for public education, we have to walk the talk that we really want to reach out on a regular basis to get more people from our communities to be part of these organizations.
And I think that would help with school involvement too, because we do reach out, but bringing everyone together is a challenge.
What we've noticed is a lot of the active Moms for Liberty people, their kids don't go to public school. It's all political rhetoric. They either homeschool or they go to private school or something. Yeah, their kids aren't even in the public school system.
I think that another thing that needs to happen is teachers need to start going to school board meetings. I'm aware that this is not true for every county in Florida, but in Lee County, teachers don't go. I mean, it's in the evening, a lot of them have kids, and it's at the district office, which is kind of a drive for a lot of people. So, but I think that if we were to start showing up, we could be that voice of reason to counteract Moms for Liberty and the other folks who decide to make it their mission to show up and talk at school board meetings.
I just want to make one final comment, and I say this as someone who has such profound respect for just what democracy really represents. But, you know, my assessment as a history teacher and as someone who's been studying and teaching history for a long time is that, you know, we really wouldn't be in this situation as a nation if more of us had been doing our part for decades. And I hold myself responsible to really get involved in participatory democracy. Democracy is more than voting. It's about getting involved in your community. It's about walking the talk on a regular basis. And so, again, with tremendous respect to my fellow citizens, we have millions of fellow Americans who are grossly undereducated. And it's very easy to take advantage of people. If you believe there's a deep state, and I say that with respect, if you believe there's a deep state, if you believe that the election was stolen, if you believe these things, then you're more likely to believe in these very hollow, shallow mantras and narratives that are very easy to repeat. You know, it's been several months since I've heard my governor even use the phrase critical race theory, because he doesn't have to anymore. Now there's members of the public, anything remotely related to race or racism or system, they just call it CRT. So the damage has been done. So here we are, this privileged opportunity to be together to really start the process of truly defending public education. So I want to thank you all for being here again. Thank you.
Earlier when I kind of asked what's like the immediate thing now, and I'm hearing this come up over and over again. This, first of all, funding. We need to call for funding, adequate funding. I hear that. Respect. I hear that. Showing up at meetings, showing up in the places where those are challenging, to be a voice of respect and trust, as you talked about building trust and building back trust. And lastly, I think the notion of getting to know those that support education, that support, thinking about elected leaders, those whose missions, whose words seem to echo what would be in the public's best interest, in the kids' best interest, and teachers. So those might be good takeaways for this group. It is a privilege to be on stage with each of you today. Thank you so much for your time, your talents, your expertise, all you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.